Do you believe in family life? It's such a great blessing that God has given to mankind. Unity in family upholds greater power to overcome strenuous and ominous situations in life. Father, mother, children all need to know each other, practice to live with love, tolerance, sacrifice, and acceptance. The real bliss of family lies in unity. Here, this day we are going to talk about an extraordinary courage and willpower shown by a family, giving the importance of family life and unity in times of trouble. Dear children, we are going to deal with the summary of the lesson "We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together," written by Gordon Cook and Unanimous from your Hornbill textbook for class 11. From the title itself, it's very evident that we are not afraid to die if we can all be together is a great message that is given to the world. Coming to Gordon Cook received his award, the Ladies' Battling Trophy, over 30 years after the incident in 1977, following many years living and sailing overseas following his return to UK. The Shipwrecked Mariner Society has been searching for him to receive this award for his outstanding seamanship and navigation, which saved the lives of his family and crew. Gordon's determination, outstanding seamanship, and navigation skills were incredible, especially considering this occurred before the use of the satellite navigation. This lesson talks about a voyage done by Gordon Cook and his family along with 2 crewmen. The highlights or the main thing that we see throughout this lesson is Wavewalker. It's a boat about 23 meters and 30-ton weight. The main character, Gordon Cook, a 37-year-old businessman, his wife Mary, his children Susanne, 7 years of age, and Jonathan, 6-year-old son, and he hired 2 crewmen, American Larry Vigil and Swiss Herb Segler. Here we have a picture of a boat with the main important parts of it. And now, going to the story, "We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together" is a story of bravery and expedition taken by Gordon Cook. He and his wife both dream of a voyage around the world on the ship Wavewalker. They were imitating the voyage made by the famous sailor and explorer James Cook around 200 years ago. We see that Gordon Cook took his voyage in the 30-foot schooner Wavewalker by his wife, then 2 very young children, Susanne and Jonathan, and 2 crewmen was on a passage to Australia. Halfway through the Captain James Cook bicentenary voyage 1776 to 1976. 200 years after the voyage made by Captain James Cook. Now let's have a quick look about Captain James Cook. Captain James Cook was born in the year 1728 on November 7 and died in the year 1779 on November 14. He was a British explorer, navigator, cartographer, and captain in the British Royal Navy. He made detailed maps of Newfoundland prior to making 3 voyages to Pacific Ocean. The first voyage was in between 1768 to 1771. The second was from 1772 to 1775, and the third voyage 1776 to 1779. Okay. The great explorer and navigator is killed by the natives of Hawaii during his 3rd visit to the Pacific Island group on February 14, 1779. Okay. Now here in this lesson we see that Captain Gordon Cook and his family just duplicating the journey once made by Captain James Cook. Okay. They started their expedition from Plymouth, England. This is the place from where they start their voyage, and it was in the year 1976 on July, the month of July. And talking about this family, they were preparing for the past 16 years to accomplish this voyage come true. And they made all the efforts to improve the skills needed for the voyage in the British waters. And as a result of that, they just made a boat with the name Wavewalker, and it was professionally made for this expedition. It was 23 meter long and 30-ton wooden hulled beauty. That is This boat is waterproof. They took several months to test the boat in the roughest weather. And as they started the journey, they planned a 3-year-long journey with his wife Mary, with 2 children, Jonathan and Susanne, and 2 hired crewmen, Larry Vigil and Herb Sigler. And the first portion of the journey, once they started from Plymouth, it was successful when they covered to 105,000 kilometers. It was very enjoyable, and the climate and the scenario, everything seemed so favorable to them. And they sailed down to the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. And from there, they took on 2 crewmen, Larry Vigil, an American, and Herb Sigler, a Swiss. And this person will definitely help them to cross the southern Indian Ocean, which seems to be very rough enough. Okay, up to here we see that they started their voyage with the family, only with Gordon Cook, his wife Mary, and 2 children. Once they traveled up to this 105,000 kilometers, once they reached this Cape Town, from there they took 2 crewmen, Larry Vigil and Herb Sigler. Okay, and starting from Cape Town, here we see that from the second day from Cape Town, they started to encounter strong gales. And it continued for several weeks. Already we have seen that the southern Indian Ocean was very hard to tackle. That's why they thought of just hiring 2 crewmen. And we see that because of the strong gales, the waves rose up to 15 meters in height. And finally we see that it rose up to the main mast. Okay. And thereafter we see that in the midst of this strenuous situation, they celebrated their Christmas in Wavewalker. Okay, and by the time they covered 3,500 kilometers from Cape Town. Okay, and December 25, apart from the bad weather, they celebrated the Christmas. And definitely they celebrating Christmas, they hope to see a change in the weather during the New Year. But we see that as they expected for good weather, it turned for the very worst. And we see that once they were just hoping for to see a good climate, we see that at the dawn of January 2nd, the waves were huge in size. And along with this unfriendly weather and massive waves forced the sailors to slow the speed of the ship. They used the storm jib, that is a very small jib for the high wind. And they also had taken other various precautions to overcome this unfriendly weather condition. And they were just moving with the speed of 8 knots per hour. Okay. And we see that what are the precautions they have taken in order to overcome this bad weather condition is, here we see that once they happen to see a huge sea in front of them, and also the noise of the waves and the strong winds are very painful to the ears, they dropped the storm jib to slow down the ship, and also they hit a heavy mooring rope, okay, which is used as a temporary anchors because they have considerably more holding power across the back part of the ship in a loop. Okay, then they put everything in double force. They put on their oilskins, they put on their life jacket, they attached lifelines and went through the life raft drills and waited because it seemed to be very huge waves coming along with a storm and gales. Okay, so they made all the precautions to protect themselves from the bad or unfriendly weather condition. Then we see that on January 2nd at 6 p.m. there was an ominous silence. And everyone thought that yes, everything is going to be perfect. The wind dropped, the sky grew darker. And when the sky was getting darker, our narrator thought that it was a huge cloud. But it seems to be a very huge wave. Then a loud roaring sound was heard. And we see that this narrator realized that it was not a cloud, but it was the biggest wave that ever he had seen. And it appeared vertical, and it had twice the height of other waves that came so far. We have already seen that for several weeks they are experiencing this. In the midst of this bad weather condition, they celebrated their Christmas. Now it's January 2nd, isn't it? And this narrator even can't believe his eyes as It's the first time he sees such a large wave. And he was just looking at this. All of a sudden, the thunder increased and the wave moved the stone up. Okay? And we see that the very instant a terrific explosion took the Wavewalker. And also we have seen that water started pouring inside the boat. At the very moment there was a great shaking in the boat, and the narrator's head smashed against the steering wheel of the boat, and before he could know something, he was thrown into the sea. He thought that he was going to die. But what happened? The narrator, when he was thrown back to the sea, his head popped out of water and he saw that the boat has almost overturned. And his lifeline jacket was stretched. He grabbed the guardrails and sailed to the ship's main pole. And at the very moment we see that there came another wave that held it upright, and the narrator was thrown back onto the deck or the floor of the boat. Or even though he had got much injured, just like his left ribs were cracked, his mouth was filled with blood and some teeth were broken, but still then he managed to find the wheel, the steering wheel, lined up for the stern, for the next wave, and he hung on. And we see that the narrator understood that now slowly and steadily the boat was getting water into it. It was flooding with water. But he dared not abandon the wheel. He was just trying to steer the wheel to move further. At the very moment we see that his pretty wife Mary came and informed him, "Oh dear, the boat was sinking. And also the water was just piling up in the boat. The ship is flooded." At the very moment he immediately thought about his children. He handed the wheel, the steering wheel, to Mary and crawled towards the hatch. Hatch is the door that opens towards the bunk of the children. And at the very moment we see that there were two crewmen. They were just pumping water out from the boat like madmen, because you know that if water just filled up the boat, there can be greater chances to get it perished or get it sank into the water. And also the very same time the wooden beams have got broken. And the starboard, the right side of the boat had bulged inwards. And all the things that is inside the boat, when the flood came, when the water was there, they started moving around with the clocks, crockeries, charts, tins, toys, everything moved around noisily in water. At the very same time, we see that Gordon Cook immediately went inside. He was swimming inside the boat. That's why it says that Gordon Cook swam and crawled into children's cabin. All throughout, we see that there is water. You might have seen the film Titanic and how it seems to be like when the water entered inside the ship. Same thing happened here. So, somehow he swam and crawled into the children's cabin to check whether they are all right. And the children replied, "Yes, we are fine." Okay? At the very instant, Susanne now, the daughter, 7-year-old girl, was complaining about a big bump that was on her head. "Father, see daddy, here is a bump on my forehead." But we see that the narrator, Gordon Cook, was not paying attention to it because his major concern was to save them from this crucial situation. And looking at this, he wanted to repair the ship, because we see that the starboard side is already pushed inside the ship. So the narrator started looking for screws, hammer, canvas, everything. And he collected whatever he could get. And through the broken starboard side, so much water was entering inside it. And if it not get fixed as early as possible, there is very sure and 10% chance that it would get sink in the sea. So immediately this narrator stretched the canvas clothes to secure the waterproof hatch. Okay? From the door side, the water is entering inside. He just made a covering. He just tried to secure the holes for avoiding the water entering inside the boat. Again we see that still some water streamed below, and they were just trying to divert the flow of the water to the side so that the water may go out. And also we see that they used hand pumps for pumping out water. This two crewmen, they were pumping out water like madmen. But what happened? All of a sudden, this hand pumps was blocked, because we have seen that things were just floating all around with the debris. Debris means unwanted things or minor things that entered inside the water pump and that blocked it for pumping water. And also they just went around to look for another one. The electric pump short circuited. Then along with that, we see that once they stopped pumping out water, the water level started increasing inside the boat. Then immediately the narrator found two hand pumps that had been removed along with the rope, jib and a small board and the main anchor. He could find that one, another electric pump under the chat room. He connected to an out pipe and started working, and he was very happy that at least he could pump out water with the electric pump that he got it from the chat room. And now, the very instant, this crewman along with the narrator, for the entire night, they were just pumping water. They wanted to make sure that the water in the boat was pumped out, and they were working on the steering wheels. By the very instant, they were trying to get signal. They were trying to connect with the radio to call for help. They started sending messages, SOS messages, save our lives, save our souls. But no replies, because by the time they reached to a remote place, they understood that no one is going to receive for the calls. No one is going to get any signals from them, because they were in one of the remote corners of the earth. No signals is getting. They can't even connect to the radio. They can't even call for mayday calls. Nothing is heard. Okay. At the very moment we see that, the next side we see that Susanne was now seamed with swollen heads. But still then, she was not complaining. Here we see that she has got bulging eyes with a deep cut on her arm. But she was not complaining about this, because she had seen that her daddy, along with the crewmen, they were just fighting with the water in order to save the life of these children. So that's why she was not ready to complain this to her daddy. She understood that the team was trying to save their life. So that's how they spent the January 2nd. It was a great tribulation day for them. And on the fine morning of January 3, we see that they managed to bring the boat under their control by pumping water. And now, once they understood that now the boat is in their control, under the control, now they thought of taking rest, because we have seen that the whole night of January 2nd they were working with pumping out water. Now, they started taking rest in a rotation for 2 hours. Okay? And they know that, but even then, they tried to bring the boat under their control. They happened to see that some water is just coming out. There is a leak somewhere below the water line. They checked it. Again and again they checked it. And they found that the boat rib, the wooden frame of the structure was badly broken. And the keel of the ship started coming out water through that keel of the ship. And we see that the whole section of the starboard side was held together with a few cardboard partition, and they have to repair all these things. And now, one thing the narrator understood. With so far damages in the boat, it's impossible to continue the journey to reach the destination. They started from England, Plymouth. And their intention is to cover up 3 years and reach the destination Australia. Now it was very clear and evident that since they were attacked by a huge wave, it's impossible to continue the journey, and it's difficult for them to reach Australia, the destination. Okay? So the narrator thought that somehow we need to save our life. We need a place to repair our boat. We need a place to secure ourselves, to save our life. They started looking for the nearby islands, and they found two islands in few hundred kilometers in the east. Okay, and one is Isle Amsterdam, the other one is Isle St. Paul. And now they thought that if we can reach Isle Amsterdam, we can save our life, we can repair our ship, and that is the only hope. So the narrator started checking the charts and calculated that Isle Amsterdam, that is a French scientific base where there is the only hope that they can reach, that is the nearest. If they could find and reach the island, there is possibility for them to overcome this strenuous situation in life. Now, in order to reach there, that depends upon what? Depends upon the climate, the weather, the wind and the sea, the current of the sea, the current of the wind. Everything depends upon their possibility to reach the island. And also, they understood that if any more damage to the boat just happens, their chances to reach this Isle Amsterdam is getting reduced. They can't bear further damage of the ship, and they were praying to God to make sure that the wind, the sea, everything is safe and secure for them to reach to Isle Amsterdam. Okay? And by the time they understood that the wave that happened on January 2nd had destroyed the ship's auxiliary engine also. So once they calculated everything, now it's on January 4th. Okay? For 2 days, this narrator along with the crewmen, they were working tirelessly to bring the boat under their control. And now it's going to be January 4th. They were now somewhat relaxed from continuous pumping for about 36 hours. And now they understood that the water level in the boat was only a few centimeters. And it's impossible for them to set sail on the main mast. Too much pressure on the ropes and wires from the main mast can destroy the frame of the ship. Okay? So after maintaining all these things, they had put the storm jib and they thought of taking their first meal in 2 days. After 2 days of great effort to bring the boat under their control, after pumping out water, after putting the storm jib, after making secure to make sure that now at least they can move comfortably, at least to reach Isle Amsterdam, they now had the first meals in 2 days. What are the things they had? They had the cracker biscuit and corned beef. Okay? And also some salt curd biscuit of beef. Okay? So once they had this, the very evening of January 4, we see that their hope and their happiness was short-lived because they saw another symptoms of bad weather at 4 p.m. And there was wind behind them, and somehow they spent the entire night. And things started getting worsened by January 5. And January 5, this narrator was highly depressed. He was disappointed. He doesn't know what to do. He thought of just going and consoling the children, because you know that 2 small children were there in the boat and they might have been watching all these things, and they were pretty sure that they are going to the end days of their life. So at this very moment, Gordon Cook slowly went to console, to give some sort of comfort to the children. At the very moment when they saw the daddy, this Jonathan, 6-year-old boy, asked, "Daddy, are we going to die?" You can just imagine the mental situation of a father who's hearing such a warning from the son. And immediately this Jonathan said, "Daddy, don't worry. We are not afraid to die if we can all be together. All of us together with Daddy, Mummy, you and myself." And when he heard these inspiring words, or a comfort and solace from the child who is not afraid to die, this father thought that somehow I need to work to make sure that I need to save the life of my children. Okay, the words, the inspiring words, the strength which was given by Jonathan just injected the narrator to fight back with the sea. He made measures to protect the starboard side with much effort, And also, he made an improvised sea anchor with a nylon rope and 22-liter plastic barrels of kerosene. And that evening, he was talking with his wife, and this narrator believed that this is going to be the end of their life. But we see that on January 6th, the ship made through the storm. Within the limitation after the narrator's reading on the sextant, he calculated that the position and the wind speed, everything. And by time, they could cover up 150,000 kilometers. And now they were looking for a small island, which seems to be 65 kilometers width, that is Isle Amsterdam. As they were just watching all these things, we see that the children comes up with much courage, providing positive vibes to their father. And now here Susanne prepared a very small, beautiful card and handed it over to the narrator. She said, "Daddy, I made this." He opened and he could see that this card contained caricatures. It contained Daddy, Mummy, Susanne and Jonathan. And there is something that she has written. Here are some funny people and how they made her laugh. Okay, she made this card in order to cheer up their father and mother and to say that we are not sorry for what happened so far. So here we see that this narrator got courage from kids once again, telling that we loved them. And also we see that the children was telling them that Daddy, Mummy, we love you very much and we thank you for the efforts that you are taking. And she also wished all the very best. So here we see that he doesn't want to lose a single hope in his life. Okay? And the narrator checked his calculation once again, and using a spare compass, he found that he told Larry to steer a course of 185 degrees. And if we go like this, definitely we can expect to reach the island Amsterdam at 5 p.m. After realizing this, he went to his bunk and slept. And we see that at 6 o'clock, his son woke him up. When he saw the time, it was 6 p.m. He thought that he missed the island. But at the very same time, we see that this Jonathan asked for a hug. And Susanne was also standing with him. And the father was asking for what? He thought he missed the island. Now, this Jonathan and Susanne said that, "Daddy, you are the best daddy in the whole world and the best captain because you found the island." And this narrator was very happy that he doesn't have words to utter. He was just overwhelmed with joy for seeing the small island ahead of them. Now, the narrator gave a sigh of relief. They could see the outline of the island. It was as big as a battleship. And it was a piece of volcanic rock with little vegetation. That night, they anchored offshore at night. The next morning, we see that all 28 inhabitants of the island cheered them and helped them ashore. Now, the narrator was very thankful to the crewmen, Larry and Herbie, who remained hopeful and optimistic throughout the hardship of the voyage. He also remained his wife. He also thankfully remembered his wife and his children who stood with them in this dire situation. He remembered his daughter Susanne, who was so brave enough not even bother to complain about the head injuries, the injury that happened to her arm with the swollen eyes and all. We see that after this, she was taken to hospital and she had to undergo 6 minor surgeries to remove the blood clot between her skull and skin. And also we see that this narrator, with great love and thankfully, he remembers his son who said, "We are not afraid to die if we can all be together." Actually, this wording instigated a sort of courage and hope to this person to fight with the sea. And now they are pretty good enough to see that they were safely landed in Isle Amsterdam. The whole family hugged each other with a great sigh of relief and gratitude. This is why I said that family, unity of family, can bring a greater possibility to see life in its fullest form. This is why the lesson entitled that we are not afraid to die if we can all be together. This is the unity of a family. This is the love of a family. Even in the dire situation, the children, even though they are very young, stood with the father to see that if we are living, let us live together. If we are dying, let us lie together. So the lesson, we are not afraid to die if we can all be together. Thank you all. Have a great day. God bless you.